Hello beautiful people, it's Derryn here from Art by Derryn, welcoming you to another ArtStart art class. Today we're talking acrylic mediums. So here's the acrylic mediums that we're going to talk about today, the gels and the pastes. These are just some that are available, but the most common ones that people use. And then we'll use them in a painting, and I'll show you how to use acrylic as watercolour as well. We'll do the mountain landscape that we worked on with our jelly plate prints. This time I've changed it around and refigured the composition. And don't forget, at the end of this video I've got an exciting competition for all my subscribers, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so let's talk about acrylic mediums. Now what I've done, I've divided the ones that I have. There is a few more that I have, but I just thought these are the ones that people use the most. Put it on black so that you can see how transparent, translucent and opaque the mediums are. Now acrylic mediums are basically divided into two. There's gels and there's paste. This is the acrylic glazing liquid that we used in the last class with the mountain landscape. This one's really good for helping you to put glazes on, and it's also extends the drying time of your paints. So you can add this to your acrylic paints and they will stay wet longer. It does thin them out a little bit, but it's a trade-off. You know, if you're working on a large painting and you want your paints to stay wet for a long time, you can add a bit of this and it will extend that drying time. Now the gels, as you can see, they're fairly transparent. Soft gel matte that we used in the last class too, that we used as our glue. And you can see how it's got a slight opacity to it. So we'd call that translucent because you can actually still see the underneath black through there. But it is blocked out just a little bit with that powder that's in the soft gel matte. If we go down here to the self-leveling gel, as you can see, it's leveled itself out. It does get a few air bubbles in it. This is one of the products they use in acrylic pours, and as you can see, it's very clear and very glossy when it dries. Another one I've got here is the glass bead gel. I've done the same motion where I put these all on with a palette knife and just sort of made a rose out of everything, just so that you can actually see the difference between them with exactly the same motion. And you can see here with the glass bead gel that it's where it's thicker, it's got a little bit more opacity to it. Then we go over to the pastes, fibre paste. As you can see, it can dry in these very sharp kind of lumps, and that you can't see through it. So it's dry relatively clear. These ones are white. Now that white will also affect, to some extent, the pigments, depending on the paints that you're using, but it will affect, like, giving a bit of a tint to some paints. Now if we go across here to the opaque crackle, this one, as you can see, has dried crack where you can see the black underneath. And that's really great for showing textures through, like on, you know, on old barn doors, or I'm going to use it in the painting today to do a rock face, to show sort of the texture in a rock face as well. But whatever colour is underneath will show through the cracks, or you can again go over it with paint and the paint will seep, if it's quite watery, will seep into these cracks. The moulding paste. This is the sort of smooth moulding paste. It holds its form. It's got some transparency. I put the same amount on of each of the pastes and gels, so you can kind of see through it a bit when it's spread out thinner. But it does have the ability to hold these peaks. This is the sort of thing that you would add to give you, like if you're working in impasto is what it's called, where you want thick paint on your painting. Now the coarse modelling paste, if you can hear that, and I can hear them smooth, and then the coarse, it's got more of a sandy texture to it. It holds a little bit more like the fibre paste, sort of peaks and things when you pull your palette knife away. But again, if you spread it out thin, it has a translucency to it, and it also holds its form when it dries. So these ones, the paste, they need to dry generally overnight when you're using them, because they're quite thick and they take a while to dry. While, as you know, with the acrylic glazing liquid that we used in the mountain landscape, we were using that thinly to put glazes over I forgot what are they called. Oh god, here we go. They are called jelly plate prints. Oh my goodness. Okay, so yeah, we were using the glazing liquid to go over the top of that, and we used the soft gel mat as the glue. I tend not to use the glass bead gel a lot. It tends to cover up things that are underneath it, but it does give you this very interesting texture, so you know, it's up to you. But look, with all these pastes, let me just show you on this one. With the golden pastes, they have a little box on the side of them that tells you whether they're transparent or opaque. So this is the coarse modelling paste, so it's opaque, which means it's covering up the black. It's matte, which means it's not shiny, like the self-leveling gel, which is shiny. This one isn't shiny. And whether it's thick or thin. So you can look on the side. I mean, I think, let's have a look. Where's a different one? This is the Liquitex soft gel mat. They've got a similar sort of thing on the side. It's got too many languages for me to sort of see, but it says paint finish. And whether it's thick or fluid, matte or gloss, it's matte, it's fairly thick, and whether it's transparent or opaque, and it's fairly transparent. So I'll show you. With all these, you really only need, I would say, if you're looking to buy your mediums to start with, I'd say definitely the acrylic glazing liquid, whether it's gloss or satin. That's the two types it comes in. The soft gel matte medium, this one's fantastic. I use it for all my collage. It's archival, which means it will last basically for a really long time. Supposedly forever, but we're not sure of that because we haven't got there yet. But this one's great for, as I said, for attaching collage, and you can use it as to extend your paint as well. But I would say the acrylic glazing liquid, the soft gel matte, and one of the pastes would be plenty to get you started. But I'd probably say coarse moulding paste would be the best one to get if you're just looking for one, because they do last quite a long time, and they're a good investment for you to have if you're doing professional painting, or even if you're just using it for your art journals as well. It's, you know, it's good to work with good products. The same as, you know, the difference between student and professional artist paints. The biggest difference is the quality of the pigment and how much pigment is in the paint. You'll find such a difference. For years I used student paints thinking, oh well, they were cheaper and they're just the same, and the colours kind of look the same, until you start spreading them out and mixing them. The quality of the pigments aren't usually as good, and you don't get the vibrancy of colour that you do with professionals. So I would recommend people get professionals. And as I said, with the ArtStart system that we use, you just need 3 paints. The red, the yellow and the blue, and that will mix all your colours for you. Again, if you need advice on colour, go to my website, www.artbyderryn.com/free-stuff. It's on the page. There's a link down below, and there's a free video there on colour explaining how to mix colours. Okay, let's get started on this painting. Okay, so I've just done a little sketch of our mountain landscape again. I've done it darker than you probably would normally do it at home, just so that you can see it on film. I've also changed the orientation. So before we painted in the landscape, which was having the long side of the paper that way, now we're having it this way up. up that way. So I wanted to show you what I did just to make this painting a little bit different. So remember, that's the painting that we started out with the photograph that we started out with for the last painting. Now what I've done is I went into one of my art programs, my photo editing programs, and started playing with the contrast, with the shadows. So you can see more of the trees up here on the mountains now. And I also put a reflection in. The photo editing software that I use it's for my iPad, and it's called Leonardo. It's a really great program, and one of the good things about it is it keeps updating. So when Apple updates their software, Leonardo always updates their program so it can continue working with the new iOS. But because a lot of the photo editing programs that I've downloaded before, all of a sudden the apps don't work because the iOS is updated. So Leonardo is a good one. I'm not sponsored by them, but yeah, it is one I'd recommend. So I put the reflection in that program, and I also then from this I played with it a little bit further. I did some silly things like put paint on it. This was in a program called Repix, just to see what it would look like with paint. I changed some of the textures, brought some of the textures forward, pushed other textures back. By putting that reflection, if you're wondering why I put that reflection on the bottom, is because I wanted to have water. And in reality, there's no water at this mountain landscape. But I'm the artist, I can do whatever I like, as can you. So I made a reflection so it looks like it's overlooking a lake or a river. What else did I do? Yeah, it was mainly textures with this one. And then in another program, another app called Pixaloop, I put some clouds in. Now from this is loosely the painting I'm going to work with. I'm going to use the paste that we've got to create the textures in the rock face mainly. I may put a few textures, this again, we want this to push back, maybe a few textures. This one's not the one I'm going to probably work from for those textures, probably this one. Maybe a little bit of fibre paste to get that sort of tree texture there. This one here, I changed the contrast so I could really see all of the fissures and everything that are in the rocks. Now wherever there's shadow, I'm not going to put paste, or I think I'm going to use the modelling paste, the coarse modelling paste, to give me that sort of stone texture in these areas here where it's fairly flat. And then when there's more complex textures here, I think I'll use the crackle paste and add like a watercolour over the top. And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to water our paints down and paint like we're painting in watercolour, but we're going to use our acrylic paints. And I'll also show you how to do a reflection in the water so that it actually looks like a reflection, and how to change the sky. So this is what I'm going to work from for the textures. And then for the painting, this one's going to guide me a little bit more, but it'll all be open to interpretation. You know me, I'll probably change things along the way. But I just wanted you to see how using photo editing software, you can take a painting that looked like, hang on, I have to get it again, looked like that, which was my photograph, and changed it into something that looked like, oh, I can do it fast, like that. And so this gives me more inspiration for my painting. So let's get started. So when I'm using acrylic mediums that are quite heavy like that, I tend to put rubber gloves on. They can be a little bit brutal on your hands sometimes, especially if you're a sensitive artist like me who has eczema. They can hurt a little bit. Now we're also going to use, these are the palette knives that I'm going to be using. You can get a pack of these for a couple of dollars to get the pastes down. I don't particularly want to touch them myself. So just looking at this here. I've put a bit of detail into it. So this here, this area here is probably where I'm going to put my crackle paste. The thicker you put it on, the thicker your cracks will be. So the thinner when you put the opaque crackle on, the thinner it is, you'll get more crackles. Thicker it is, you'll get larger crackles. I'm just going to put that into this area here quite thickly because we want a thick. Now I could have put a dark brown down underneath this and just pop this on top, and then that would show through. That's one way of doing it. I can do it this way. I could also colour the crackle if I wanted to before I put it on. But I think I'm just going to pop that on like that. Thicker and thinner in a few places. And bring it down to here. Now because this is the same rock face, I want this to relate to this, so I don't want to put like a thicker layer over here. Even though it's a different medium, I want to go about the same thickness. Okay. Now, in these areas here, like here and here, these are the dark areas in the cliff face, so I'm going to not put any paste in that area. Now, check with these as well. Whenever you use them, make sure you wipe off this edge before you close them up again, because they can get really stuck, because they are basically a glue. So let's see, we're going to avoid that area there. That's black. And we want to get that sort of sandstone look. So any lines that I have in this, I want it to sort of be going across, because sandstone, I don't know if you know, when it lays down it forms layers. And it's just sand. So I'll pop this on this way. Actually, I might try a different, just different, just got a smaller point, and I can get that flat line. So you can see you can change between your palette knives. Find one that's easier to work with. In the spaces, have I just filled in the dark bit? I have. Ah dear. Okay, let's just. This is the easy thing. While they're wet, they just wipe off like that, so it's no problem. Okay, let's try again. Okay, that's the piece there. Like that. A bit of a line there. And there, and there. So you can carve into your pastes and your gels and things. Well, the gels not as much, but the paste you definitely can carve into while they're wet. You can manipulate them. You can see I'm putting about the same thickness down. I don't see how when you pull off the palette knife you get these little points. You want to try and smooth those down. You don't really want lots of points in this kind of thing. See, it's got a few. I don't think I've got enough on there. It's basically like icing a cake. And just play. Truck going past. Let's have a look. It's got a few lines. Like that. Going down. And a little bit more there. Now I could have just filled this whole section in and then wiped out the if you want any rocks to stand out, you can just make them a little bit thicker like that. The mountain range done. Now I could add a little, just to bring the texture down, in this grassed area down here. Fairly thin layer again of the coarse modelling paste. And then what I'm going to do is cut into it. With a clean palette knife and just get that texture of the reeds just a bit there. Using the very point of the palette knife to get those textures there. Okay, so that's going to be our reeds. So a little fibre paste. These trees. In this area here. See, I'm putting the paste on sort of in a circular motion just to get that sort of sense of canopy of trees through there. Texture on these trees, just the ones at the front. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry overnight and I'll be back.
I'm happy to announce the first ArtStart giveaway of Matisse Acrylic Mediums and an ArtStart stencil pack. Included is the ArtStart Texture Stencil and the ArtStart Soul Journey Stencil, which also includes its masks. And there's 3 75ml tubes of Matisse Acrylic Mediums, including the Polymer Gloss Varnish, the Gel Medium and the Impasto Medium. For your chance to win, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment on this video. I hope you'll join me for Acrylic Mediums Part 2, where we finish our painting by using acrylic paints with a watercolour technique. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for your chance to win this ArtStart giveaway. Bye for now.